Welcome everyone to this morning's Family Caregiver webinar on the topic of long distance caregiving. I will introduce our speaker in just a moment, but before I do, I just have a couple of slides to go through. I know a lot of times we get questions about how the follow-up will happen. So just if you weren't here earlier, just so that you do know, we are recording these webinars and we will send you a link to the recorded version in a follow-up email. So if you are wanting to share it with anybody or go back to it, you're welcome to do so when it's convenient for you. We'll also share a copy of the PowerPoint slides, so you'll have that in the follow-up as well. For questions, we encourage you to ask questions. You can type them in. It should say either question or chat. You're welcome to type those in during the presentation, and we will go through those at the end and answer any questions that have come through. So feel free to type those in the middle. That's perfectly fine. And we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Carrie McClellan. I'm the Outreach Manager for ElderHelp, and I have the opportunity to facilitate webinars like this so that we can help educate individuals who might be caring for a loved one, whether you're in the same town or whether you're from afar. This topic is really relevant, and Jean, our presenter, and I talked about it being a good one to happen in January because many people visit their loved ones over the holidays and find out things that maybe have been going on that they weren't aware of, and maybe they don't live in the same area. So just looking at all of those different aspects and how to continue to support their loved ones in that and create a good care team. So I'm excited about today's topic. Let's see. Before I introduce our speaker, just a brief overview about ElderHelp and our organization. So we are a nonprofit organization in San Diego that supports older adults who are still wanting to maintain their independence and continue living in their own homes. And that often takes a lot of different resources coming together to make that happen successfully. So we also connect with family members who might be caring for a loved one so that we can make sure that everybody on the team is getting adequate support. We have been supporting individuals in our community for over 49 years now, so we're almost up to our 50 year, which is pretty exciting for us. We offer a variety of direct services to older adults, so information and referral service, and that's really for anybody who is looking for resources. So you're welcome to call us at any time and get resources as well. We offer Are You Okay check-in calls, so for somebody who might want that daily check-in, just gives you peace of mind knowing that somebody's checking in with your loved one, and we'll call if there's any concerns or issues that come up. We offer transportation through our Seniors A Go-Go volunteer driving program. Our care coordination program offers resource connection and advocacy through our social workers, as well as additional volunteer services in the home and outside of the home. We offer a variety of housing services. If you missed our webinar last month, it was on our home share program, so you're welcome to check that out on our website. And we also support nutrition and have a food pantry as well as grocery shopping services. And then our family caregiver support program is where these webinars come through, because we understand that not everybody knows what resources might be available or how to navigate the process of being a family caregiver and what that means. So we try to bring a variety of topics to individuals so that you can learn and also share with other people in your lives as they might need the resources and information as well. We do record all of our webinars, as I mentioned, so you can have access to our webinar library on elderhelpofsandiego.org on our family caregiver page, and you can access all of those and upcoming webinar information as well. We are very grateful for our partnerships, and we partner with Southern Caregiver Resource Center as well as Alzheimer's San Diego. And that leads me to our introduction of today's speaker that is with Alzheimer's San Diego. So let me share a little bit about Jean. So Jean Alton has worked in the field of Alzheimer's disease and related dementias for over 30 years. She has a bachelor's degree in psychology and in recreation therapy, and is a certified positive approach to care dementia trainer. Jean's expertise is built upon her many years of experience working in a variety of settings, including memory care in facilities, adult social day programs, early memory loss programs, and care management. Jean is a senior dementia educator with Alzheimer's San Diego, where she provides community education and coordinates programs for people with early stage dementia. So Jean, welcome. Happy New Year to you. And I look forward to hearing all of the tips and expertise that you share with us today.
Thank you, Carrie, for the kind introduction, and good morning, everybody. I'm happy to be here, as always, co-presenting here with ElderHelp, partnering with ElderHelp, and hope that all of you who are in attendance today are reaching out to one or both of our organizations for the resources and support that each of you need. And so let's get started. We have lots to talk about here today. Long distance caregiving. Now, I want to tell you right from the start that this is a resource heavy presentation, especially with regards to websites. And while I'll kind of go through those specific slides fairly quickly, again, to reiterate that you will get by email the copy of today's slides, so you will have those resources at hand for you. So don't get in a panic if you feel like you didn't get all those websites down. You will receive that when you get going. So let's see here if I can make things happen with the slides. There we go. So here's our agenda for today, the challenges of caring for someone with dementia from a distance. That's where we're going to start. And then we'll start talking about supporting the local caregivers who are there in that particular location where the person living with dementia is, identifying supports in that area. We'll talk briefly about the vast array of technology solutions that can be used. We will talk about planning visits and, again, some resource lists at the end of the presentation. So we'll start with the challenges of caring for somebody with a diagnosis of some type of dementia from a distance. And the questions that first come up here is, I guess we ask, what is a caregiver? Who is a caregiver? Do I meet those definitions? And, what is long distance? How do we get this all together to define who is a long distance caregiver? And broadly speaking, what I would say, and most of us would agree with, is, you don't need to be somebody who is actually in person to be defined as a caregiver for somebody living with a diagnosis of dementia. You don't need to be somebody who actually provides hands-on care to be defined as a caregiver. And so the term caregiver is very broad. And I think how we would talk about long distance caregivers is to say, if you are at all involved in the decision making, in the oversight and planning of events and schedules and such for the person living with dementia, then you are a caregiver. And even beyond that, if you are not a decision maker and you're not involved in planning routines, daily activities, appointments, etc., but you care about and or love somebody living with a diagnosis of dementia who lives away from you, then you are also a caregiver. I think often when I talk about this slide defining a long distance caregiver of a family, I worked with a woman here in San Diego County with dementia and her husband, who was her on-site and primary caregiver. But she had a sister in another state that she had a very, very good and close relationship to. And the sister regularly flew in from out of state to spend time with the sister with dementia. And so she too was a long distance caregiver, even though she was not a decision maker, even though she was not involved in kind of the scheduling and the oversight of her sister living with dementia. She was somebody who lived elsewhere, who cared about and loved her sister, who was the person living with dementia. So what are the challenges of caring from a distance? All sorts of different challenges. And so what we'll start with is, as a long distance caregiver, you have to question the information you are receiving and asking yourself, is it incomplete or unreliable? Now, if you're receiving information from the person living with dementia, it's important to remember that they have this disease that is affecting their memory. And so the information that they are providing to you may not be entirely accurate, and in fact may not be anywhere close to accurate. So it's important to get a second source of information, another person who can either corroborate what information you're receiving or provide you with, whatever it is that they know. The other thing to think about is sometimes even with communications with somebody who is a caregiver on site with the person with dementia, you may not be receiving complete information. You may just be receiving kind of little bits of it. And an example here that I will give to you is this, and this happens, I think, fairly frequently. We certainly hear about it often at Alzheimer's San Diego, is that a son or a daughter that lives out of state is communicating with mom and dad here in San Diego. One of the parents has dementia, and let's say it's mom, and dad is reporting that, mom's doing okay, they're fine, everything's going pretty good, they see the doctor regularly. And come to find out after a visit that really mom has progressed, the dad is struggling and very stressed, and that they're having some real challenges. But dad's not reporting that to the adult child who lives out of state, perhaps because he doesn't want to worry them, perhaps because he wants to, remain independent and caring for his wife without wanting to burden the children, all sorts of different reasons. So the first and foremost thing in terms of being somebody who is caring for a person with dementia from a long distance is to look at the information you're getting and make sure that what you're getting is accurate. There can also be great uncertainty about knowing when or how to intervene. And again, this is sometimes dependent on the information you're getting. It can also be dependent on the relationships you have with people on site. And it can also be dependent on whether you are actually a named and legal decision maker or not. So this is a complicated area. These areas, if you're having challenges with them or are feeling like there's going to be a challenge and you're not sure how to approach it, I would really recommend that is something that you either call Alzheimer's San Diego or ElderHelp to talk about, because you may need kind of a more one-on-one consultation with one of the professionals from our organizations who can give you some thoughts and some insights in this whole idea of how and when to intervene. I've referenced already having limited authority to intervene if you're not named as a decision maker, if you don't have a legal stake in this situation. The other thing that's a big challenge is not being familiar with local resources. And, truthfully, why would you be real familiar with local resources if you live out of state? And that's not to take away from the people who do a lot of work to find out about the local resources. That's fantastic. it's also good to realize that resource information can and does change over time, and there might be some new great resources available, and or other resources that were there are no longer. So it's good to have somebody local, some boots on the ground, so to speak, that can assist you with identifying and being familiar with local resources. There are the logistics of being a long distance caregiver, everything from the time differences to the travel time to get back and forth and to the expense associated with that. All of this requires a fair amount of an individual, both in terms of personal time, perhaps time away from a job, perhaps time away from your own family or your children, and certainly expenses. We certainly know flying anywhere anymore has been for a long time something that is costly and can sometimes require painful amounts of patience and commitment to get there, just with the challenges that we've seen over the past few months with canceled flights and technology problems with the airlines and so forth. So it's simply not something that is easily done. So what are some of the other challenges of caregiving from a distance? Well, managing responsibilities. What we're talking about here is everything from the responsibilities you have in your own location, your own home, to the responsibilities that you have or feel you need to attend to at the distant location where the person living with dementia is. And there can be lots of kind of conflict between all those. So if I am a long distance caregiver daughter for my mother with dementia in another state, and I have full-time employment here, and I'm at maybe a more senior level, so it's hard for me to get away from work. I've got children in high school who are living here still at home who need oversight and supervision. And of course, I have a partner, a spouse of some kind, whatever other responsibilities I have here locally. And then I have this person that I care for long distance, who is my mom, who let's say in this instance, I really love and have a good relationship with. And maybe I'm her power of attorney for health and finance, but she is living in another state with a sibling. And I have this responsibility to her. And then let's go on down to guilt, that I'm carrying guilt, the fact that I'm not there, that I can't see her every day, that, I am not able to be much more hands-on caregiver. And then perhaps I'm feeling guilt too, because of then the time and attention that I give to my mom and her situation and her needs is taking away what I can give in terms of time and attention to my family, to my children, to my partner and spouse, and to my work. So can be a tremendous amount of guilt associated with these roles of being a caregiver, and with some additional challenges for those who are long distance caregivers. Roles and responsibilities shift when you're dealing with distances. So while I may be legal power of attorney for healthcare for my mom, I'm her decision maker at such time that she's no longer able to make informed decisions about her own health care. But I'm not there in that state where she lives. So I do have to shift some of that responsibility to somebody else. I may still be the one who's deciding and speaking on her behalf regarding healthcare decisions, and do we need to see another doctor or get a second opinion or what it might be. But I need somebody there that actually is able to assume responsibility for making those appointments, making sure mom gets there, that they are there with her in the doctor's office, writing down what the doctor says, because we can't rely on mom's memory. So I have to shift those responsibilities and roles around. And that, again, takes time and effort as a long distance caregiver. And then, of course, there's family conflict. And, you know, if you have not had family conflict in your family, kudos to all of you. Most of us have at some point in time, to some degree or another. And, you know, for some families, there's a lot of family conflict that people are not in agreement about how they see a situation, how they think intervention should proceed, if at all. There can be some real heavy and sometimes hurtful conversations about these things amongst family members. There can be real disagreement about it that requires outside people to come in, mediators to come in to help families come to decisions. And, you know, clearly it can be something that really disrupts and sometimes, unfortunately, destroys relationships. Whew, that's a lot of stuff, isn't it? A lot of things to be thinking about when you are a long distance caregiver. So let's dial it down a little bit here, and let's focus right now on communication challenges. Well, as we've already talked about, the number one challenge with communication is the memory loss or confusion that is going on. And I can't tell you how many times we've heard from families, from people who are long distance caregivers, who, again, I'm going to go to the example of an adult child living out of state, and mom and dad are reporting that everything is fine. And they, you know, maybe visit at Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever it might be, and they see that things are not fine. But all along, you know, I get mom on the phone and I ask her, how are you feeling? She says, good. I ask, are you taking your medications? Did you see your doctor this week? You had an appointment. Yes, I did. What did the doctor say? He said, everything's doing, you know, chugging along. I'm just supposed to stay on my medication and go back and see him, you know, in a few months. And so again, is this information accurate? Is my mother's memory of the doctor's appointment correct? Did, in fact, maybe there's been a medication change that she's forgotten about, and maybe she didn't even get the prescription filled. And if we pull dad into it, maybe dad is a little bit unaware as well too, and or he's not reporting this information to me as an adult child. So we go back to that whole focus of needing to really look at the information we're getting and find ways to corroborate or confirm that information, but obviously to try and do so in a way that respects dignity and independence too. People sometimes have limited insight into their own diagnosis of dementia. And so some examples here might be a person living with dementia who is reporting to all of those around them that they are doing fine. They may say, no, the doctor did not diagnose me with dementia. I don't have Alzheimer's disease. They may be continuing to not agree with that, to argue about it, to just, you know, cause every time that there is some communication about this where the caregivers and the long distance caregiver may be saying, but Mom, the doctor said you do have Alzheimer's disease and you need to have somebody with you all the time. And Mom is saying that is not true. This is an example of limited insight into a diagnosis. And it's different from denial. This is not somebody who knows, inside, knows that they really do have a diagnosis of dementia. This is somebody who has limited insight and awareness of their own diagnosis, okay? So they're not in denial, they're not lying to us, they're not trying to make life more complicated. They truly believe that they are doing fine and that they did not receive a diagnosis of dementia. People confabulate. Have you ever heard that word, confabulation? Feel free to throw some comments in chat. And what's interesting, I find it interesting about confabulation, is we all do it. And so what we're talking about with confabulation is we fill in the gaps. So almost certainly, whatever it might be, 99.999% of us as the population, the general population, we don't have 100% accurate memories. And what I want you to think about is those times where you've maybe been together with friends or family and you start reminiscing and telling a story about days gone by, and one family member says, yeah, and remember we went to ABC restaurant, and another family member says, no, it wasn't ABC restaurant, it was DEF restaurant. And yet another family member says, no, I don't even remember us going to a restaurant, do you? So there's some different memories of how this reminiscence event unfolded. And again, it's these gaps in our memory that we are filling, not intentionally, that's what we do. In our own memory, the story that I am telling is the accurate one. It's the family member across the way that's not remembering it correctly. So this is confabulation, where we fill in the gaps. And it's a natural thing, we all do it. Now, our people who are living with a diagnosis of dementia continue to do this with their dementia as well too. So they will begin to fill in the increasing gaps in their memory with this confabulation, this explanation or whatever it might be of what transpired, where they were, what happened. Good and actually fairly simple example of that might be if you ask Mom with dementia, what did you have for breakfast today, Mom? And Mom answers, oh, the usual, piece of toast and a cup of coffee. And maybe, in fact, Mom didn't have any breakfast at all and didn't make coffee. But this is confabulation, filling in. And, it makes sense to Mom, it makes sense to whoever she is communicating with, but it is confabulation. There is difficulty using technology, and this is true to a greater or lesser extent for a variety of people. There's certainly plenty of older adults who have mastered and managed technology very, very well. And there's certainly younger adults or more middle-aged adults who maybe have not mastered a lot of technology. So the difficulties can be on either end, whether it's the person with the diagnosis of dementia or the long distance caregiver. And, technology really is actually a pretty important part of our communication with people who are at a distance from us. So having difficulty with the technology can really impede communication. Well, another area that's very clear that it affects communication is hearing loss and untreated hearing loss for sure. But even with folks that do have hearing aids and use hearing aids, using platforms like GoToWebinar or Zoom is sometimes not sufficient, that people can't capture the whole conversation because of the hearing loss. Perhaps they need the closed captioning to be able to better grasp all of the communication that is going on, in addition to having the video and audio feed. Hearing loss can also be impacting use of a phone, a cell phone or a landline as well too, in terms of being able to really completely capture information. And, you know, again, that could be on either side of the long distance caregiver or the person living with dementia. And then lastly, what is important to recognize is that communication long distance takes away a lot of the context for us. That's the part that we end up missing in the communications. We may say something in person that is taken to be something that is maybe questioning decision making, but it is questioning out of care and concern and love. That's harder to grasp when we are talking about communicating, for example, through technology. If I'm questioning decision making, it may be taken more as a criticism or a judgment, or you know, kind of something more negative rather than coming from a place of care and concern. So we lose that in-person sense of context when we are limited to communication via long distance, via technology. So, and that can have some real impact on that communication, but also on the relationship. So important to keep that in mind. Okay, so information needs. As a long distance caregiver, these are the things that, you know, I would like to say need to have, but it might be a matter of want to have or would like to have, depending again on the extent of your role in the person's life. But certainly if you are a decision maker, you know, a close family member or somebody who's really kind of in the inner circle of the person with the diagnosis of dementia, these would be the main things you would want to have information on, which is their health status, appointment scheduling and what that looks like. And that includes everything from doctors, yes, but also to maybe to dentist or to exercise class or 2 or 3 times a week to an adult day program, whatever it might be, any of those appointments. You want to know about household activity, what's going on. Is there maybe a housekeeper coming every other week to clean the house? Is there an in-home caregiver that comes 3 times a week for 4 hours each time? What is going on as a part of the daily routines? Financial information is vital to know about, clearly, especially if you are a decision maker or part of the inner circle and somebody who, you know, will become a decision maker. You need to know what the finances look like to be able to start thinking and planning for the future, and also to ensure that there's not financial problems happening right now. For example, bills not being paid. And then just in a general sense, just that daily life, safety and general well-being. to know what's going on and is the person maintaining, at the very least, and at best thriving, rather than the opposites of that, which would be they're not failing to meet their own needs appropriately. And, it is impacting their daily life, their safety, and their well-being. So, with regards to access of information, I'm not going to go into details on each of these. What I will direct you towards is our Alzheimer's San Diego's webinar library, where you can watch a previously recorded webinar called Legal and Financial Basics that will take you through all of these important legal documents and areas that you need to have some knowledge about and or be aware of where this information is. And that's going to include, of course, advanced healthcare directives. If a person has particular wishes regarding, what is going to happen at such time that they are very ill with whatever it might be, and what kind of health care they wish to receive at that time. Powers of attorney, again, referring to powers of attorney for healthcare decision making, and for finances, so for asset management. Conservatorship or guardianship, as it's called here in California. This is something you also want to know about at any rate. And this may be related to a situation where a power of attorney has not been named, so that people are needing to pursue conservatorship or guardianship. HIPAA waivers and other release forms are important. Although a person may have a power of attorney for healthcare decision making, maybe that's what I have for my long distance mom in another state, but oftentimes, and in the middle of the situation that's going on, let's say mom, she's not doing well physically, and the caregiver that I have with mom out of state needs to take her to emergency. So off they go to emergency, and the caregiver calls and says, the doctor's here. I say, put the doctor on the phone. And I say, this is my mom, and I have her power of attorney for health. And the doctor says, well, I need to see the HIPAA waiver. Well, the HIPAA waiver, well, I don't have that. All I have is the power of attorney. More and more healthcare organizations and institutions are requiring these HIPAA waivers. And so it's important to, with the person with the diagnosis of dementia and whatever health entity, organization they are using, wherever their primary doctor is, that you make sure that if you are somebody who needs to have that health information, that you get a HIPAA waiver from that organization, and you, and in this case, me and my mom both sign it, where mom gives me permission to receive her health information. Banks and other accounts that you may need to have access to sign in on and to sign off on for the person living with dementia. And you may need to pursue this not only with the bank, but also under the advice of an elder law attorney. So some things to think about. And of course, just digitally, all the account numbers, the passwords, how we have remote access, all that information. And that's usually quite a lot of information for most of us anymore. Make sure that, that information is somewhere that is accessible to you, and particularly if you are the power of attorney for finances as well too. And so let's see what we've got here. Come on. So let's just talk about supporting local caregivers. So I think, first and foremost, you want to build a relationship with local caregivers in as much as is possible. Hopefully it's not a conflicted or contentious relationship with local caregivers. So, one of the ways you can build that relationship is to ask how you can be most helpful to the local caregiver. And, think about what you bring to the table in terms of your own strengths and your own limitations. And think about how you can utilize your strengths to be helpful to the local caregiver. If you're a great organizer, maybe you're the one who takes over mapping out the schedule, the daily, weekly, monthly schedule for, the next few months. And so you're the one who creates that document or uses one of the tools online that you can use to set up that document. And you're the one that fills in all the appointments and such, gathers the information from all that are involved and sets that up. Or maybe you're really good at research. And so you take on the role of being the person who does research into the local resources, that you spend time online looking organizations up, vetting them, contacting them, finding out, how they work. Are they good? Are they not so good? Whatever it might be. Additionally, think about your schedule and how you might be able to adapt it once in a while to give the primary caregiver a break. And this is a really important one. And this is one we hear about from families at Alzheimer's San Diego, where they talk about family members that are out of state, and the family members here in San Diego will say to us, I don't think that my brother in another state understands how difficult it is to care for mom. And I wish he would just come out and spend a long weekend with her so I can take a break and so he can see what it's really like. And, that would be probably one of the best gifts that you can give a local caregiver, is a break where you come in and assume 24/7 responsibility for the person living with dementia so they can truly take a break. You want to get education and training, and this is true across the board as a caregiver. And this is important because you want to get your education and training from proven sources, and it is important in order for the support system to come together and be on the same page. And if you have a network where one family member thinks that if you take certain supplements that Alzheimer's disease can be prevented or cured, and you have other members of the support network that don't agree with that standpoint, it's important to, the best that you can, get education and training to broaden your view, and also to ensure you're receiving accurate information in terms of what you believe and what you believe to be true. It's important to identify local resources, and we'll talk more about that a little later on here. Well, actually right away. So what are the local resource needs? Everything from, I'm not going to go through this list, but it's everything from, yes, household management to medications to utilizing perhaps programs or having in-home care, safety. All of these things are important. There's a lot of moving pieces here to be thinking about. And that's a lot for a caregiver to do too. And it's a lot for a long distance caregiver to do. And perhaps, I was about to say perhaps more challenging, and maybe that's not the right way to say it, but it just provides, it's a different set of challenges, trying to manage all these needs from a distance. So this is something where it's good to build a team, a support system, and a team that you all work together so that whoever it is, boots on the ground with the person living with dementia, is working fully and cooperatively, hopefully, with the long distance caregiver and vice versa. So how do you identify local support? Well, some great ways to start actually is to call. If you're here, if the person living with dementia is here in San Diego, call Alzheimer's San Diego and call ElderHelp of San Diego. And, we are local supports, but we can also refer you to many, many other local supports. You want to talk to the professional advisors in the area, and that can be anyone from a healthcare professional, a doctor, a nurse, a pharmacist. It could be somebody who is an aging life care specialist. They used to be called geriatric care managers. It could be a local elder law attorney, or a local CPA or estate planner, or whoever else it may be. People who are here in the area who are professionals working in San Diego who have access to some of these networks and resources. A great place to go is the Area Agency on Aging. And here's the website for that particular agency. And so you'll find these Area Agency on Aging everywhere, like in every state is what I mean. And they're a good resource to go to just start getting the lay of the land in terms of what is out there. Any of these either people or professionals or websites can also direct you to local dementia resources. But again, you've got to start here with Alzheimer's San Diego and ElderHelp of San Diego, because we can then direct you to other dementia resources here in San Diego County. For sure, don't forget places like senior centers and libraries as well too. Great sources of information to find out what is in the community. And then online. Online is good, but it is important that you be a critical thinker when you are looking online at information to ensure that you are getting really trusted sources of information. So think about that. We do have a tip sheet on that particular topic at Alzheimer's San Diego. And I thought I might have had it handy here, but perhaps not. It's just a tip sheet that gives you guidance in terms of what do I need to be thinking about and looking for when I'm doing some online research. So I mentioned the aging life care professionals earlier. This is what we used to call the dementia geriatric care managers. And that was something I did for a period of a few years. Aging life care professionals are certified professionals. There is a national organization with local chapters. Advanced training is required as a part in the areas of social work, nursing, counseling, other areas, and that is required as a part of the certification process, in addition to ongoing education. What can these folks do? Well, they can help navigate the long-term care system for sure. And the long-term care system is complicated, folks. there's always bumps in the road in the long-term care system. And it's really nice to have somebody on your team that can help navigate, that knows the ins and outs of the long-term care system, but not just navigate, but also advocate on behalf of the person with dementia and the family as you are encountering these bumps. Aging life care professionals can become the eyes and ears of the family, or whoever it is that is responsible, is the decision maker for the person living with dementia. And this can be extremely helpful when we're talking about long distance caregiving. These professionals can help prioritize, strategize, and manage the responsibilities. Everything from the doctor's appointments to going to the appointments and making sure accurate information is relayed to the family, that proper prescriptions are sorted out, that medication management is being managed, to hiring in-home caregivers, to being the person that you call at 1 in the morning on a Saturday night when mom has just been admitted to the ER with what appears to be some pneumonia. And I'm out of state, I cannot get there. And she's got a caregiver with her, but she needs somebody who has this deep knowledge to be able to navigate and advocate, who can go to the ER, be there with mom all night long, bring in some additional help if necessary. We'll talk to the doctors, ensure that mom is getting the best care that she can. And these are some of the things that I did myself. And if you or someone you care for has ever been in ER, and you think about somebody living with a diagnosis of dementia, there are some of those spots in the long-term care system that are not dementia friendly, people, and you need to really think carefully about having a well-versed advocate available. It doesn't necessarily need to be somebody you are utilizing all the time, but somebody who is available that you can go to in the event of an urgent or emergency situation. That's what these folks do. There are professional fiduciaries available. Here in California, the organization is called PFAC, Professional Fiduciary Association of California. And these are people who can do a variety of things. They can act as a trustee of an estate. They can also act as a conservator or guardian, somebody who is involved not only in overseeing the finances, but also the healthcare decision making. They could be an estate executor who manages that end of things after a person has died. They can provide the daily money management, the paying of bills, the transferring of money to accounts, all those different things. They can also, again, be a healthcare representation, somebody who makes sure that the healthcare wishes of the person living with dementia are represented appropriately, and they take care of those important decisions that often need to be addressed over the course of the disease. They can also be an agent under a power of attorney. So all sorts of different options for a professional fiduciary. The other thing to know is these folks can be a great resource for those, again, that are long distance caregivers and need somebody, again, locally to manage the day-to-day finances and payments of things, which can be a big task and a big responsibility for somebody who is at a distance. So a good resource there. Now, let's have a quick look, well, not so quick, maybe, look at technology solutions and really what we've got coming up next. Hopefully, if we don't have technology problems to the technology solutions, well, we've got a little video that I think is, I don't want to give anything away. It's a video I really like. So let's see how we do with that. There. So that was kind of cute, huh? The presumably adult children in this situation had all sorts of technology that they provided to dad that they thought would be so helpful and help them to know better what's going on. So it's just kind of a cute reminder that sometimes the technology that we think is going to be the best to use, we have to think about who we think it's best for. Sometimes we're thinking it's going to be best for us rather than the person who will be using it. And to think about what it is we are hoping to achieve by using the technology and if those goals are reasonable. So there's all types of technology solutions. And again, I'm not going to go into detail. And a reminder that you're going to get lots of websites listed here, especially in these last few slides. So you will get that when the email comes out with the attachment of the slides. There's automated pill dispensers that at some appointed time will unlock and open, and there's the little pocket with the medications for the day. Some of them have a chime on it or a reminder or something. They can be helpful. They also have limited use because of the progressive nature of dementia. There are health and safety monitors and sensors that you can use, everything from the very simple to the more complex. Same for door locks and security systems. And really, it's true all throughout technology. It runs from A to Z in terms of simple to complex and from, quite affordable to quite expensive. So it depends on what you're looking for, what you want to achieve, and what your budget is. And also keeping in mind then, what your person living with dementia is able to use or do with technology. There are fall detectors as well that people can use. And again, a fall detector, you think about it, and so the system tells you somebody had a fall, maybe fell getting out of bed, and then you have to think through. So then, what do I do with that information as a long distance caregiver? Do I call? Do they not have a caregiver then at night? So do I call 911 or do I call a neighbor, or do they have a caregiver that stays with them overnight? And I make sure the caregiver is up and knows that the person had a fall. So you got to think about the after part of receiving that information, what you do with it. Let's see here. Okay, planning visits, and I'm going to kind of go through this fairly quickly, but a couple of tips for sure. It's important to coordinate with the primary caregiver, the person who is those boots on the ground, and find out from them what do they need at this time and what do you need to know. You may want to think about maintaining a set of local supplies if you travel frequently. I think often of a person we had at this particular class some time ago who was caring for her father actually in Texas. And she lived here in San Diego, and she went out regularly to Texas to see her dad and to check in on him. He had caregivers and such in Texas. And so what she said she started doing was, rather than packing a bag every time to go to Texas, she established at his house, a change of clothing for 2 or 3 days, some toiletries, whatever things that she might need, that she kept there at his house, so that all she had to do was make sure she had her wallet and, if she was taking medications, her own medications, make sure those things were either in her purse or her bag or something, and then hop on the plane. And that helped for her, just kind of streamline this whole process of doing this regular visiting to Texas. Consider the length of your visit and make sure you do set realistic goals and attend to your own self-care needs here too. So again, all of these things very important. There we go. The most important one is to remember to spend some quality time together. It's easy to get focused on the tasks that, we need to get done when we're there. Here's the list, A, B, C, D, E. We need to get all these things done. But this is really important, to spend some quality time together. However that looks like. Go get an ice cream cone together. Maybe drive down to the beach with the ice cream. Maybe you just sit in the car and eat your ice cream and watch the waves and watch the sunset. I guess that's if you're in a coastal, you're coming out here to San Diego, or you're going to a coastal area. But just whatever it is that's going to contribute to quality time. Okay, now we're going to go into resources, and I'm not going to go through these in detail, folks. If you have questions, call us at Alzheimer's San Diego and talk to us, and we can tell you more about these resources. So this is, kind of the heavy load of information. Of course, there's Alzheimer's San Diego and all the different things that we do and the supports that we have, from talking to our clinical services team, virtual support groups, our ongoing education, social activities and outings, respite program, volunteer respite program for caregivers that are here locally, caring for a person with dementia, and Vitals, which is a volunteer-based program for people here living locally who live alone in the community. So that might be one if you are a long-distance caregiver to somebody living with dementia in the earlier stages here in San Diego who is alone. You might want to think about getting that person involved in our Vitals program. Now, for those of you who are here, and I will say, I was about to say, I believe for people who might be out of state, because it is a support group that is offered via Zoom, you may be able to join it as well too. It is monthly on the 4th Thursday of the month, and it is a later afternoon group. For more information on this group and to register for it, go to our website, /support groups, to find out more. So this is a good resource for people for sure. You'll be able to talk about the specific challenges with people who are going through the same kind of things. Okay, additional supports. Carrie referenced at the start a partnership with the Southern Caregiver Resource Center, and yes, this is a good organization. They have lots of different supports to offer to families. There's the Family Caregiver Alliance, all sorts of different information there. Family Care Navigator will help you look at a whole bunch of different resources specific to the state that you are in. And so have a look at that as well too. For other resources, Compassion and Choices. This is a really good online resource for end-of-life planning, talking about advance directives, and if those things have not been put in place, kind of how to go about that. The National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys, NALA, is a reference base and information base to elder law attorneys and special needs attorneys throughout the US, and here in California, and then here in San Diego. And that is information we can provide you with as well too, with regards to San Diego County and the elder law attorneys and estate planning attorneys here in San Diego. The National Association of Senior Move Managers. This is a great resource, again, for long distance caregivers. If I'm out of state and mom's wherever she is living, and we've all made the decision, including mom, it's time for her to move into assisted living or assisted living with memory care. And she's going from, the house I grew up in, which is a, 3 or 4 bedroom, 1 or 2 bath house. Now she needs to pare all of this down to go into a small apartment in assisted living. It's a lot of stuff to go through and have to get rid of and to coordinate. These are the professionals that you can hire to bring in, and they just take care of that whole process, and can save a lot of time and energy. Yeah, I think it's well worth the money. It can save a lot of time and energy that you as a long distance caregiver might otherwise have to put into this, and expense too, by the way, in terms of having to fly from wherever you live to where your parent or person living with dementia lives. Look for some of the local independent dementia support organizations, and here's a list of many of them. And what do we mean? And then there's some national and international organizations, the Alzheimer's Association, the Alzheimer's Disease International, really good information. That's in the UK, really good information. All of these local independent organizations, we say local and independent in that they are not part of any national organization. They are specific to the areas they serve. So you're getting really good and accurate local information. And so additional information here, Orange County and Los Angeles are also independent organizations that you can access. Again, the Alzheimer's Association and Alzheimer's Disease International. And so that concludes it. A lot of information that we talked about here today. You may need some time to kind of digest it and think about it a little bit. And then if you have questions or thoughts, or you need clarification, or you just want to kind of talk things through, please call us, and we're happy to do that with you. So that's what we have for you here today. Being a caregiver is a tough job. Being a long distance caregiver has its own unique challenges. So we want to do whatever we can to support you.
Thank you so much, Jean. I know that it was a lot of information, but I really feel like it was a good overview and deep dive into certain topics that people could really benefit from and in their planning. So thank you for sharing all of that. It does look like there are a couple of questions. So if you have a few minutes for sure. Those, I want to see which ones. Let's see where we needed to start. Oh, there was a webinar that you referenced. I think it was back on the access to information slide that Alzheimer's San Diego has in your webinar library. And somebody was asking about the name of that webinar. And my apologies if I don't have the specifics.
Yeah, Legal and Financial Basics.
Perfect.
And so, it just kind of covers just what the title suggests. Good basic information for people to, you know, and I would say even a little bit more than basic information. It's pretty comprehensive, but understandable. So and by the way, it's presented by one of the 2 elder law attorneys here in San Diego County. So you're getting it right from the experts. This is not one of our staff that's reading prepared slides. This is an area where, you know, we want to give it to the people who really know this stuff. So, and that's in our webinar library. Go to alzsd.org and go to education tab, getting help, and then to the education tab, and then scroll down to the webinar library.
Wonderful, thank you. Very good. And then a question that came in was in regards to having a healthcare directive. If you're named on that document, is that the same as a HIPAA waiver?
No.
So I know those documents get confused.
Yes. So I may have I may be named as the power of attorney for health care decisions, you know, the legal document, but I go to Scripps where my mom is, you know, she's in ER and I'm asking the doctor to tell me what's going on. And, you know, I don't have the power of attorney document in front of me to show the doctor. And sometimes even if you do, that's, you know, the hospitals and the medical organizations, the healthcare organizations are understandably have a very specific outline of steps that, you know, have to be taken for them to release health information. They're very protective of health information. And most of these organizations, like Scripps, like Kaiser, have their own HIPAA waiver. Although you can just get a general one too. But you know, you want things to be streamlined when you're in this situation. Mom's in the hospital, I need to know what's going on. So don't wait till that time. You know, in this case, when I go with mom to the doctor for a regular appointment, I say to the doctor, I need to get the Scripps HIPAA waiver so mom and I can sign this. And then mom, you know, signs it that says, yes, you know, if, you know, I'm unable to make decisions or to communicate my health status to my daughter, I'm giving permission for Scripps to release that information to her. So important to have.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then there was another question, and you touched on this, but the question is related. So if there is a decision in play to move the person living with dementia to the location where the sole caregiver lives, they're wondering how someone can go about assessing whether the move is actually possible health-wise. Like, who makes those decisions?
Well, I think probably the first place to go is to the primary care physician to get that professional assessment as to whether, you know, the move is something that can physically be managed and tolerated, is, you know, without consequence to the person living with dementia. And I think, you know, in my experience, what I will say, oftentimes it can be done, but it still needs to be thoughtfully planned out. You know, oftentimes, I mean, flying in an airplane and for any of us anymore is just like this, can be this hugely traumatic event. And we don't have dementia. So, you know, for people with dementia, and again, every person with dementia is different. Some people might be just fine to get on a plane and go through like the scanner and you know, security and all that. They might be just fine with that. Other people might not be. So you have to think about those things. But, you know, having a long 3-day car trip, is that better or worse? I don't know. You have to be very thoughtful about these plans, but start with the physician. And some other things to think about is if you have a really good health professional support network set up for mom in that other state, and you want to move her here to be with you, are you going to be able to replicate that healthcare support system for mom? And how important is that at this point in the disease process as well, too? Maybe it's less important. Maybe it's more important to have her closer to you so you can spend more time with her because she's in the later stages of the disease now. Things to think about.
Definitely, yeah, good points for sure. Just another question, if somebody has already been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, is it okay for them to sign legal documents like a HIPAA form? So what are the rules around that?
Broadly speaking, yes. So a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease does not immediately equal incapacity. So capacity, meaning the ability to understand what it is we are agreeing to and signing, is fluid. It can be fluid for any of us, but it is fluid, especially for people with dementia, and especially in the earlier stages of the disease, where they may have some days where cognition and memory are better than it is on other days, where the explanation of what a power of attorney is or a HIPAA waiver is can be done fairly simply, and they can understand it and you know, kind of repeat back to us what their understanding of it is, and it makes sense. Where maybe something more complicated like, oh, I don't know, some other type of legal document, say for example a trust, might be more complicated than they're able to process. Okay, so capacity is talking about, do they understand at this moment in time that they are going to sign this document? Do they understand what it is they're about to sign? And, you know, we just had actually a presentation from an elder law attorney, and one of the questions he said as an attorney that they're getting ready to sign documents, you know, he says, why do you want, he says to the person with dementia, why do you want your daughter to be your health, your let's say, power of attorney for finances? And the answer is, because my daughter wants to be, is not as good an answer as because I want my daughter to be. So, you know, the attorneys kind of know how to ask those questions too. If you feel you need the advice of an attorney, call one. You may be able to just get some quick answers on the phone. But again, capacity is not, a diagnosis does not immediately mean you don't have capacity.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you. We'll just do one more, and then if anybody did not get their questions answered, you'll have all of the contact information to follow up and get those conversations directly with a professional. But one final question about if you have any resources for dealing with memory care facilities, specifically when a person is on Medicaid or Medi-Cal.
Yes, we do. Lots of good information. So call us for sure.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you all so much for being here and for listening in. And I will be sending a follow-up again with the recorded version of this webinar, as well as a copy of the slides so that you have the links that were included. There's a lot of great resources that you can check out. And thank you again so much, Jean, for sharing all of that and being here today as the expert.
For sure. Always happy to partner with ElderHelp, Carrie. So thank you, and take care, everybody, and we'll see you again sometime.
Yes, thank you. Take care, everyone. Stay safe.